Dan Ives out with a new bullish note on the AI trade as he's been conducting his channel checks in Asia. He is the global head of technology research. He joins us from Hong Kong. Good morning to you, Dan.
Great to be here.
So what you found supports the bullish case for AI? Is that what you've been finding?
Yeah, I'd say overall in the region, look, demand to supply for NVIDIA chips, it's about 10 to 1, potentially 12 to 1. Look, we do these trips, 3-4 times.
After doing his channel checks in Asia, Dan Ives releases a fresh optimistic note on the AI trade. He is in charge of technology research worldwide. He comes from Hong Kong to join us. Dan, good morning to you. It's great to be here. So, your findings lend credence to the optimistic view of AI. Have you been finding that? In my opinion, the region's demand for NVIDIA chips is 10 times greater than its supply. As you can see, the demand for NVIDIA chips is roughly 10 to 1, with a possible 12 to 1 ratio. We take these travels 3 or 4 times a year. You see, it's about what the region's manufacturing demand looks like and what use cases are driving it. But it all boils down to hardware, isn't it? And for NVIDIA, that is extremely optimistic. Over the next 12 to 18 months, I believe the street is underestimating numbers by anything between 20 and 30%. And the majority of what I believe this also means is that, based on everything we've seen today from Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and Oracle, among others, we're only in the second inning of this all unfolding, and every check we have is simply giving us more and more confidence that this will continue. Additionally, I believe the street has undervalued it. Could you then provide more details about the location of these channel checks, Dan? For example, which chips are you referring to if export controls exist? Where are you looking at these channels? Indeed, if you look closely at Taiwan and what NVIDIA is showing, I believe that supply and demand are the key factors. It goes without saying that you have controls over China, but that remains a mystery. However, what do I think the region's demand looks like? And I believe it's probably up 20% when I compare it to even 3 months ago. And that, in my opinion, demonstrates that the need that we are witnessing throughout the region is unavoidable, particularly from a production standpoint, and that the use cases are driving this demand. Big tech spending is clearly the driving force behind it. However, if there's a headline here, I believe it's that it's not slowing down. Going into next year, I believe capital expenditures will be greatly understated. Additionally, that is positive for TSMC, AMD, NVIDIA, and, of course, the hyperscaler side. We continue to pound the table as a whole, in my opinion. When you look at names like Palantir and Snowflake, the consuming use case plays, I hope you're having dim sum for breakfast, Dan, since that's how breakfast is. Yes, but I didn't realize that until I traveled to Hong Kong. So, I hope breakfast is going well for you. I would like to know what you are hearing about Huawei. What do you know about the processors they're essentially developing to take on NVIDIA and eventually AMD? We are currently in a position where they essentially have import controls. I just want to know what the atmosphere is like. Indeed, Huawei has a great chance. They are attempting to close the gap, particularly in light of the events involving China and big tech. I believe that NVIDIA is still the chip that everyone wants, if you look at where they are in the world. However, notice how it also mentions Alibaba and Baidu, in our view. From a Chinese viewpoint, Alibaba in particular is in a perfect position for things to accelerate. So I think they are going to be 2 names. However, it simply demonstrates that this is an AI weapons race in progress, which is encouraging for investors on all sides, whether they are in the US or China. Quote from It's About the Power, stupid. All right, present that thesis to me. You always manage to extract the ideal nugget, Ed. Indeed, as you can see. There is anticipated to be, OpenAI has stated that they require 20 gigawatts of power. That's a reasonable amount of change at 16 billion per gig. Additionally, all of these businesses are establishing data centers in Texas. To use Texas as an example, it's a somewhat ideal location. On the Mitchell family's Longfellow Ranch, Horizon is the only one with its own natural gas power supply. That is fantastic news, but the rest will require a significant amount of power. Additionally, Texas already has a grid issue. We are thus looking at Laffer, Tanglerot names, that can address some of the grid issues and data center issues that come with this significant build-out. And there is optimism in photonics. Power consumption reduction is still a ways off, and build-outs are crucial. According to the co-CEOs of Oracle, we recently learned that supply is more important than demand. These data centers cannot be constructed quickly enough. Let's move on to the promise of photonics, as you are already familiar with Coherent as a corporation. Nancy, remind us of the thesis and how quickly you believe it can be realized. Yes, Caroline, that is the question. Coherent is primarily concerned with developing photonics to meet the demands of quantum computing, which will only complicate the power issue more. Therefore, we have implemented a new approach known as macrocycle opportunities, which consist of 4 themes: nuclear, robots, space, and quantum, because AI is central to many, if not most, of those themes. We are attempting to identify the businesses that will spearhead the next wave of transformation. Coherent's one, then. Another name that is significant to us is Quanta Services, which is not a photonics name. We have it in both our growth portfolio and macrocycle, and we own it in our 12th best. The backlog for updating current power providers or systems is $36 billion. Nancy, you're doing what a lot of the market is currently required to do, which is to infuse these forward-looking statements with a great deal of optimism. This includes promises of quantum and photonics, in addition to the real returns on investment in AI. What basic studies do you use to conclude that these are good bets? Caroline, I'm not sure what we've done, and I didn't respond to your query about timing. I mean, it might be 10 years is the expected time frame, but we've seen things pick in speed. Additionally, the CEO of Exelon stated at AI World yesterday that the next 10 years will witness more change than the previous 100. However, in the process of building the portfolio, we have identified leaders who account for between 40 and 50% of the total. Therefore, considering quantum, IBM is a relatively low-risk business model, followed by Coherent, an enabler, and then speculative names like IonQ and Rigetti. Accordingly, the goal is 10 to 15 to 20%, and the enablers are 20 to 25. By establishing stakes in current technology that are already generating profits and combining them with speculative names, we are attempting to reduce risk. Nancy, we began by discussing the news of Meta's most recent, or 29th data center, which is a gigawatt in Texas. If my Bloomberg terminal data is accurate, you hold a minor position in Meta. However, they aren't a hyperscaler, are they? How do you think about the build-out they're doing and the appeal of the larger thesis you just presented to us? We do own a very little portion, Ed, but as you may remember, we have previously discussed this topic and sold off the majority of our interests because we believed that the advertising business model was not what we wanted to accomplish. We were mistaken, by the way. They then shifted their focus to AI, which is, in my opinion, what is motivating these expenditures. Additionally, they have had some success drawing in high-level executives from a variety of businesses, most notably Apple. As a result, I believe that we switched to In my opinion, we performed better using However, the fact that we missed the Meta run raises the question of whether they can turn it into income, and I believe that will be the difficulty. But according to a recent article by Mark Mahaney, the bottom line is affected by the sharp increase in EBIT per employee and revenue per employee at Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. We'll see, but I believe it's still unclear how they plan to make money off of this. They're investing in both people and capital expenditures, after all. Just a short question, Nancy. Will Elon's compensation package be approved by a vote? I believe so. I'm hoping so. As a shareholder, I prefer to support the CEO.